The dirt under Lily Owens's bare feet had long since stopped feeling cold, though the Montana Territory's autumn wind cut through the thin cotton of her dress like 1,000 tiny knives. She stood at the edge of Independence, a ramshackle settlement that barely warranted the name town, watching the sun bleed across the horizon while her stomach twisted with a familiar emptiness that had nothing to do with hunger. At 22 years old, she had learned that comfort was a word reserved for people born into different circumstances, people whose fathers had not drunk themselves into early graves and whose mothers had not followed soon after from exhaustion and heartbreak. The boarding house where she worked stood behind her, a sagging two-story structure that smelled perpetually of boiled cabbage and unwashed men. Mrs. Henley, the proprietress, paid her in room and board plus $2 a month, which might have been robbery except that Lily had nowhere else to go and no other prospects in this harsh land, where women without family were viewed with suspicion at best and contempt at worst. She scrubbed floors until her hands bled, hauled water until her back screamed in protest, and endured the occasional wandering hand from boarders who thought her station in life meant she had no right to dignity. The sound of hooves on the hard-packed road drew her attention. A rider approached from the south, sitting tall in his saddle despite what must have been a long day's travel. Even from a distance, Lily could see the quality of his horse, a magnificent chestnut mare that moved with the kind of confidence that came from good breeding and better care. The rider himself wore a dark hat pulled low, but his shoulders were broad beneath a canvas coat that had seen use but not abuse. She should have gone inside, should have returned to the endless pile of linens that needed washing, but something kept her rooted to that spot as the rider drew closer. When he passed near enough for her to see his face in the dying light, their eyes met for just a moment. His were a startling gray-green, the color of sage after rain, and they held an expression she could not quite name. Not pity, which she had learned to recognize and despise, but something gentler, something that made her chest tighten in a way that felt almost painful. Then he was past, guiding his horse toward the livery stable at the far end of town, and Lily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. She wrapped her arms around herself and hurried back inside, where Mrs. Henley was already bellowing about supper running late. The boarding house dining room was chaos that evening, as it was every evening. 15 men crowded around tables meant for 10, shoveling food into their mouths while they talked over each other about claims and cattle prices and the coming winter. Lily moved between them with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee cups and dodging elbows, making herself as invisible as possible. It was a skill she had perfected over the past 3 years, since arriving in Independence with nothing but the clothes on her back and a letter of introduction to Mrs. Henley from a distant cousin who had since moved on to California. She was pouring coffee for old Mr. Hendricks when she noticed the stranger from the road had taken a seat at the corner table. Up close, he was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps 30 at most, with dark hair that needed cutting and a few days' worth of beard shadowing a strong jaw. He sat quietly, not joining in the boisterous conversations around him, his attention on the simple meal of beef stew and bread before him. When Lily approached with the coffee pot, he looked up at her with those unusual eyes and said, "Thank you, miss," in a voice that was low and courteous. It was such a small thing, being thanked, being called miss instead of girl or hey you, but it struck her with unexpected force. "You are welcome," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hand trembled slightly as she poured, and she silently cursed herself for the weakness. She had learned long ago not to read too much into simple kindness from men. It usually meant they wanted something. but he just nodded and returned his attention to his meal, and when she collected his empty dishes later, he had left 2 bits beside his plate. The tip was far more than necessary, more than she usually saw in a week from all the boarders combined. That night, lying on her narrow cot in the windowless room she shared with Sarah, Mrs. Henley's daughter who worked the front desk, Lily found herself thinking about gray-green eyes and a voice that had spoken to her like she was a real person worthy of courtesy. It was foolish, she knew. Dangerous, even. Hope was a luxury she could not afford, had learned not to afford after too many disappointments had left her heart bruised and weary. The stranger was still there at breakfast, which surprised her. Most travelers pass through Independence without staying longer than a night. The town existed primarily as a stopping point for ranchers bringing cattle to market and prospectors heading into the mountains, not as a destination in itself. But there he sat, eating eggs and biscuit with the same quiet manner as the night before. Over the next 3 days he remained, taking his meals at the boarding house and spending his days in town conducting business that Lily could not fathom and knew better than to ask about. Each time she served him, he thanked her. Each time, he left a generous tip. And each time, she felt that same unsettling flutter in her chest that she tried desperately to ignore. On the 4th morning, Mrs. Henley called her into the kitchen before breakfast service. "That man, Grayson Lattimer, has made an inquiry about you," the older woman said, her expression suspicious and calculating in equal measure. Lily's stomach dropped. So her instincts had been correct. He did want something. "What kind of inquiry?" "Says he is looking to hire a housekeeper for his ranch. Offers room and board plus $15 a month." Mrs. Henley crossed her arms over her ample bosom. "I told him you were contracted to work here. $15 a month." The sum was staggering, more money than Lily had ever imagined earning. But she knew what housekeeper often meant when a single man made such an offer, and the disappointment cut deeper than she wanted to acknowledge. She had thought, foolishly, that perhaps he was different. "I understand," Lily said quietly. "I will stay out of his way." But Mrs. Henley was not finished. "However, he has offered to pay me $50 for breaking your contract early. $50 for a girl I took in out of charity." The older woman's eyes gleamed with avarice. "I have half a mind to accept. Lord knows Sarah could take over your duties, and $50 would see us through the winter nicely." The bottom fell out of Lily's world. Whatever this man wanted from her, Mrs. Henley was prepared to sell her to him for $50. She thought of protesting, of reminding her employer that she was not property to be bought and sold, but what would be the point? She had no rights here, no protections. If Mrs. Henley decided to throw her out, she would be on the street with nothing and no one. "When?" Lily asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded when everything inside her was crumbling. "He is leaving tomorrow morning. Wants you ready at first light if I agree." Mrs. Henley studied her critically. "You have always been a good worker, I will grant you that. Kept your head down, did not cause trouble. Maybe this is an opportunity for you." An opportunity. Lily wanted to laugh at the bitter irony, but she had learned long ago that laughter, like tears, was a luxury she could ill afford. Instead, she nodded and returned to her duties, moving through the day in a numb haze while she tried not to think about what awaited her at this stranger's ranch. That evening, Grayson Lattimer approached her while she was scrubbing the front steps. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed to mock her darkening prospects. "Miss Owens," he said, and she was startled that he knew her name. "Might I have a word?" She sat back on her heels, pushing a strand of dark hair from her face with the back of one wet hand. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes that spoke of long days in the sun, and a scar that ran along his left jawline. He was handsome in a rugged, weathered way, but she had learned that handsome men could be just as cruel as ugly ones. "Mrs. Henley says you have spoken with her," Lily said carefully. "I have." He removed his hat, holding it in both hands. "I want to be clear about what I am offering, Miss Owens, because I have a feeling you might have the wrong impression." "Do I?" She could not keep the bitterness entirely from her voice. "My ranch is about 15 miles south of here. It is a good property, 2,000 acres with a creek running through it, and enough grazing land for the 500 head of cattle I currently run. I have 12 men working for me, good men, but not a one of them knows the first thing about keeping a proper house or preparing a decent meal. I have been managing on my own for the past 3 years since my mother passed, and I will be honest with you, I am not doing a good job of it." Lily listened, her hand still dripping water onto the steps. "I need a housekeeper," he continued, meeting her eyes directly. "A real housekeeper. Someone to manage the household, prepare meals, keep the place clean and organized. It is a large house, built by my father before he died. 6 bedrooms, though only one is currently in use. There is a bedroom on the first floor near the kitchen that would be yours. You would have privacy and respect, Miss Owens. I give you my word on that." "Why me?" Lily asked. "You do not know anything about me. I know you work harder than anyone else in that boarding house. I know you are up before dawn and do not stop until well after dark. I know you are polite to men who do not deserve your politeness, and you do your job without complaint." He paused. "And I know you deserve better than this." Something in his voice, in the sincerity she saw in those gray-green eyes, made her want to believe him, but belief was dangerous. "What if I do not do the job to your satisfaction? Then I will pay you for the time you have worked and arrange transportation back to town, along with a letter of reference." He said it so simply, as if it were obvious. "Miss Owens, I am not looking to take advantage of anyone. I am looking for help running my home. If you are not interested, I will accept that and find someone else. But Mrs. Henley has agreed to release you from your contract if you want to accept my offer." Lily looked down at her raw, reddened hands, at the threadbare dress that was her only good clothing, at the steps she had scrubbed 1,000 times before and would scrub 1,000 times more if she stayed here. What did she have to lose, really, besides a life of back-breaking work for minimal pay and no prospects? "I will do it," she said quietly. "I will come work for you." The relief on his face seemed genuine. "Thank you, Miss Owens. I will have everything arranged. We will leave at first light." He settled his hat back on his head and nodded to her courteously. "Have a good evening." That night, Sarah helped her pack her few belongings into a worn carpetbag. "You are awfully brave," the younger woman said, her eyes wide. "Going off to some ranch with a man you do not even know." Lily did not feel brave. She felt terrified and reckless and desperate all at once. But she smiled at Sarah and said, "Perhaps it will be a good change." She did not sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined scenarios both hopeful and horrible. By the time the sky began to lighten, she had exhausted herself with worry and was almost too tired to be nervous anymore. Grayson was waiting with a wagon when she emerged from the boarding house, her carpetbag in hand. He immediately jumped down to take it from her, storing it carefully in the wagon bed where she could see supplies and provisions packed securely. "Good morning, Miss Owens," he said, offering his hand to help her up onto the seat. "Did you sleep well?" It was such a normal, courteous question, the kind people asked each other without thinking. But no one had asked Lily how she slept in longer than she could remember, and the simple concern in his voice made her throat tighten unexpectedly. "Well enough," she lied, accepting his help up. The wagon seat was worn but clean, and there was a folded blanket waiting for her. "Thank you." The ride out of Independence was quiet. The sun rose slowly, burning away the morning mist and revealing the vast Montana landscape in all its harsh beauty. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks already white with early snow. The grasslands stretched out in rolling waves of gold and brown, broken occasionally by stands of cottonwood and pine. After about an hour, Grayson said, "Tell me about yourself, Miss Owens. Where did you come from before Independence?" Lily kept her eyes on the horizon. "There is not much to tell. My father worked various jobs, never staying in one place long. My mother did her best to keep us together. They both died within 6 months of each other about 4 years ago. I had a distant cousin in Independence who arranged the position with Mrs. Henley." "I am sorry for your losses," Grayson said quietly. "Losing both parents is difficult. You said your mother and father have both passed as well," Lily ventured. "Yes. My father built the ranch from nothing, came out here in 1855 when this territory was still barely mapped. Worked himself nearly to death making something lasting, something to pass down. He died 7 years ago. My mother was stronger than he was in many ways, kept everything running, but after he was gone, something went out of her. She lasted 3 more years before her heart gave out." "So you have been running the ranch alone since then," Lily said. "I have had good men working for me," Grayson corrected. "But yes, the responsibility falls to me. It is what my father wanted, what he prepared me for. I just wish I was better at the parts that do not involve cattle and horses." He glanced at her with a slight smile. "Hence why I need your help." They stopped at midday beside a small creek to water the horses and eat the lunch Grayson had packed. Lily was surprised to find fresh bread, cheese, and apples, simple but good quality food. They sat on a fallen log while the horses drank, and Lily found herself relaxing slightly despite her lingering weariness. "May I ask you something, Miss Owens?" Grayson said after a while. "Of course. Why did you seem so frightened when Mrs. Henley told you about my offer?" Lily felt her face heat. "I think you can probably guess why, Mr. Lattimer. A woman alone, a man offering generous pay, a remote ranch. It is not difficult to imagine what some men might expect in such a situation." He nodded slowly. "I suppose I did not think about how it might appear. That was thoughtless of me." He turned to face her more directly. "Let me be very clear, Miss Owens. I am offering you employment, nothing more. You will have your own room with a lock on the door. My men have strict instructions to be respectful, and any of them who step out of line will be looking for work elsewhere. You are an employee, and you will be treated with the dignity and respect that entails. Why are you being so kind to me?" Lily asked, the question bursting out before she could stop it. "You do not know me. I could be lazy or dishonest or terrible at housekeeping." Grayson was quiet for a moment, watching the water flow over the creek stones. "My mother used to say that how a society treats those who have the least is the true measure of its character. I have been fortunate, Miss Owens. I inherited land and opportunity. The least I can do is offer fair employment and fair treatment to someone who has not had those advantages." It was not at all the answer Lily had expected, and she found herself blinking back unexpected tears. She turned away, not wanting him to see, and busied herself repacking the lunch items. They reached the ranch in the late afternoon. Lily's first glimpse of the Lattimer property took her breath away. The house was indeed large, a 2-story structure built from logs and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. It sat in a natural valley, protected from the worst of the wind, with the creek Grayson had mentioned running perhaps 200 yards to the east. Beyond the house stood a large barn, several outbuildings, and a series of corrals where she could see horses moving. "It is beautiful," Lily said, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Grayson smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "My father chose the location well. Come on, let me show you inside." The house was even more impressive within, though Lily could immediately see evidence of years without proper care. The main room was spacious, with a large stone fireplace and furniture that was good quality but dusty and worn. The kitchen was well equipped but cluttered and in need of a thorough cleaning. Dishes were piled in the dry sink and the floor had not been properly scrubbed in some time. "I know it is a mess," Grayson said, sounding almost embarrassed. "I have been focusing on the ranch work and letting the house go. It has been getting away from me." "It just needs attention," Lily said, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. "Nothing that cannot be fixed with time and effort." He showed her to the first-floor bedroom that would be hers, and Lily nearly wept at the sight of it. It was easily twice the size of the room she had shared with Sarah, with a real bed covered in a quilt, a dresser with a mirror, and a window that looked out toward the creek. The room was dusty but structurally sound, and when Grayson demonstrated the lock on the door, turning the key in the mechanism, Lily felt some of her lingering fear ease. "The men eat in the bunkhouse most of the time," Grayson explained, "but I take my meals in the house. Usually just breakfast and supper, as I am out working during the day. If you could have breakfast ready by 6 and supper around 7, that would be ideal. Beyond that, use your judgment on what needs doing. There is an account at the general store in town, so when we make supply runs, you can get whatever you need for the household." It seemed too good to be true, which made Lily suspicious despite Grayson's apparent sincerity. But she nodded and said, "I understand. When would you like me to start?" "Take this evening to settle in," Grayson said. "There is some leftover stew in the cold box that we can heat for supper. Tomorrow morning is soon enough to begin properly." That evening, Lily explored her new domain while Grayson tended to the horses. The house was indeed large and would require significant effort to bring back to proper order, but the challenge excited her in a way she had not felt in years. This was not just scrubbing other people's dirt for minimal pay. This was the opportunity to manage a real household, to take pride in her work and see the results of her efforts. When Grayson came in for supper, Lily had already tidied the kitchen somewhat and had the stew heating on the stove. They ate together at the large wooden table, and the meal was surprisingly comfortable. Grayson asked her opinion on various household matters, seeming genuinely interested in her thoughts on everything from meal planning to the best way to organize the pantry. After he retired upstairs for the evening, Lily sat in her new room, still hardly believing the change in her circumstances. She tested the lock twice, reassuring herself, then sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was comfortable, the quilt soft and well made. Through the window, she could see stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, more stars than she had ever seen from the boarding house in town. Maybe, just maybe, this would be different. Maybe Grayson Lattimer was exactly what he seemed to be, a decent man offering fair work for fair pay. The thought was both hopeful and terrifying, because if she let herself believe it and was wrong, the disappointment might break something in her that had barely survived intact this long. But as she lay down to sleep that first night, in a real bed in a room of her own with a lock on the door, Lily allowed herself the smallest flicker of hope. The next morning, she woke before dawn, as was her habit, and set about making breakfast. The pantry was poorly stocked and disorganized, but she found eggs, bacon, flour, and coffee. By the time Grayson emerged from upstairs, freshly shaved and ready for the day, she had a proper meal laid out on the table, his face lit up at the sight. "Miss Owens, this looks wonderful." I have been living on cold beans and hardtack more often than not." "That will change now," Lily said firmly, surprising herself with her own conviction. "A ranch this size needs proper meals, Mr. Lattimer. Men work better when they are fed well." Over the following days, Lily threw herself into her work with an energy born of purpose. She scrubbed the house from top to bottom, organized the pantry, mended curtains, and beat the dust from every rug and cushion. The work was hard but satisfying in a way her labor at the boarding house had never been. Here, she could see the difference she was making. The house began to shine with care, to feel like a home rather than just a place where someone slept between long days of ranch work. Grayson seemed to notice and appreciate every change. He thanked her for each meal, complimented improvements to the house, and always treated her with unfailing courtesy. His ranch hands, when she met them, followed his example. They were respectful, kept their distance, and seemed genuinely grateful for the improvements in their employer's household. Tom, the foreman, was a weathered man in his 50s who had worked for Grayson's father. "It is good to see this place coming back to life," he told Lily one morning when he stopped by the kitchen door with a request from Grayson. "The boss has been working himself ragged trying to do everything. He needed help, but he is too stubborn to admit it most of the time." Lily found herself curious about Grayson in ways that went beyond employer and employee. She noticed small things: how he always brushed down his horse before seeing to his own needs, how he spoke gently to the animals, how he listened carefully when his men brought problems or concerns. He was patient and fair, quick to praise good work and equally quick to help with difficult tasks, rather than just giving orders. In the evenings, after supper, he would sometimes linger at the table while she cleaned up, telling her about the ranch operations or asking her opinion on household matters. These conversations gradually expanded to include other topics: books they had read, places they had been, thoughts on the changing territory as more settlers arrived. "Did you always want to be a rancher?" Lily asked one evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival. Grayson considered the question. "I suppose I never thought about wanting anything else. This was my father's dream, and he raised me to carry it forward. But yes, I think even if I had been born to different circumstances, I would have been drawn to this life. There is something about working with the land, with animals, building something that will last beyond your own lifetime." He paused. "What about you, Miss Owens? What did you want before circumstances brought you here?" No one had ever asked her that before. Lily set down the dish she was drying and thought about it. "I suppose I wanted to feel safe," she said slowly. "To have a place that was mine, where I did not have to worry about where the next meal was coming from or whether I would have a roof over my head next month." Such small dreams, but they seemed impossible for so long. "They are not small dreams at all," Grayson said quietly. "Security, safety, a place to call home, those are fundamental needs. Everyone deserves them." The way he looked at her when he said it made Lily's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with something she dared not name yet. As autumn deepened into the first hints of winter, Lily found her role on the ranch expanding naturally. She began baking extra bread and pies for the men in the bunkhouse, knowing they appreciated the gesture. She organized the household accounts and pointed out areas where money could be saved with better planning. When one of the hands, young Billy, tore his good shirt, she mended it for him, and word spread quickly that Miss Owens was handy with a needle. The house itself transformed under her care. She brought order to chaos, cleanliness to neglect, and gradually, through small touches like wildflowers in a vase or a quilt aired and draped over a chair, she brought warmth to what had been merely shelter. Grayson noticed everything. His thanks were frequent and sincere, but Lily began to sense something more in the way he looked at her, in how he found excuses to linger in her presence. It should have frightened her, but instead it sent a flutter of something warm and cautiously hopeful through her chest. One evening in early November, a bitter wind was howling outside when Grayson came in from a long day moving cattle to winter pasture. He looked exhausted, his face reddened from cold and wind burn. Lily had hot stew waiting and had heated water for him to wash up. "You take too good care of me, Miss Owens," he said as he gratefully accepted a bowl of stew. "That is what you pay me for," Lily replied, but her tone was gentle, almost teasing. "I pay you to keep my house," Grayson corrected. All of this you do beyond what any job requires." "The kindness of it." He shook his head. "I just want you to know it means a great deal." Later that evening, as a storm rolled in properly and rain began to drum against the windows, Lily was putting away the last of the dishes when she heard a strange sound from the main room. She found Grayson kneeling by the fireplace, trying to coax the fire back to life, but his hands were shaking. "Mr. Lattimer," she approached cautiously. "Are you all right?" "Just cold," he said, but his voice was tight with pain. "My hands, they get stiff sometimes in weather like this." Old injury acting up. Without thinking, Lily knelt beside him. "Let me see." When he hesitated, she added softly, "Please." He extended his hands, and she could see the stiffness in his movements, the way his fingers would not quite straighten properly. Old scars ran across the knuckles of his right hand. "What happened?" she asked quietly, gently taking his hands in hers and beginning to rub warmth back into them. "Horse accident 5 years ago. Got my hand caught in a rope when a spooked mare bolted. Broke most of my fingers and they did not set quite right. Usually it is fine, but cold weather makes them ache and stiffen up." Lily continued her gentle massage, bringing circulation and warmth back to his hands. She was intensely aware of the intimacy of the moment, of how close they were kneeling together, of the way he was looking at her in the firelight. "Thank you," Grayson said softly. "Lily." It was the first time he had used her given name, dropping the formal Miss Owens, and hearing it in his low voice sent warmth flooding through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "You are welcome," she whispered. "Grayson." Something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible line crossed. When Lily released his hands and moved to stand, Grayson caught her wrist gently. "Wait," he said. "Please." She froze, her heart suddenly pounding. This was the moment she had been half expecting, half dreading. The moment when he would reveal what he really wanted from her, when kindness would show its true price. But he just looked at her, his gray-green eyes serious and searching. "I need to tell you something, and I hope it will not make you uncomfortable, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." Lily's mouth went dry. "All right. These past 2 months, having you here, it has changed everything, not just the house, though that is certainly cleaner and more comfortable than it has been in years, but the whole feel of this place. Coming home is no longer just falling into bed exhausted at the end of the day. It is something to look forward to, your presence, your conversation, your smile, rare as it is." He took a breath. "I am trying to say, quite badly, that I have developed feelings for you, Lily. Feelings that go beyond employer and employee." Of all the things she had braced herself to hear, genuine affection was not among them. Lily stared at him, speechless. "You do not have to say anything," Grayson continued quickly. "I know this is sudden, and I understand completely if you do not feel the same way. Your position here will not change regardless. I just could not keep pretending that what I feel is purely professional gratitude." "I do not understand," Lily said, finding her voice at last. "Why me? I am nobody, I have nothing. You could have your pick of proper ladies, women with education and family and prospects. "I do not want a proper lady," Grayson said firmly. "I want someone real. Someone who understands what it means to work hard, to build something from nothing, to not take comfort and security for granted. Someone kind and capable and stronger than they even realize." He paused. "Someone like you." Lily felt tears welling up, and she could not have said if they were from joy or fear or some combination of both. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I have learned not to trust, not to hope. Every time I have let myself believe something good might happen, I have been disappointed or hurt." "I know." Grayson released her wrist but did not move away. "I understand that fear. All I am asking is that you give me a chance to prove that not everyone will disappoint you. No pressure, no expectations. Just the possibility of something more between us, if and when you are ready." It was the if and when that decided her. Not a demand, not even really a request. Just an offer, gentle and patient, with no ultimatum attached. She looked at this man who had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, who had given her safety and security and asked nothing inappropriate in return. This man whose quiet strength and gentle nature had been slowly working their way past her defenses, despite all her efforts to keep her heart locked away. "I think," she said carefully, "that I might already have feelings for you too, but I do not know how to trust them. I do not know how to trust this." "Then we will learn together," Grayson said simply. "One day at a time, at whatever pace feels right to you. I am a patient man, Lily. I can wait." That night, Lily lay in her bed listening to the storm rage outside and marveled at the strange turn her life had taken. 2 months ago, she had been scrubbing floors in a boarding house, believing she would never know anything better. Now she had work that fulfilled her, a home that felt safe, and a man who claimed to care for her not despite her circumstances, but because of who she was. It was too much to process all at once, so she focused on what she knew for certain. Grayson had been nothing but honorable. He had kept every promise he had made. And when she examined her own heart honestly, she found that what she felt for him went far deeper than gratitude. She admired him, respected him, and yes, was growing to care for him in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. Over the following weeks, their relationship shifted and deepened in subtle ways. Grayson began finding more excuses to spend time in the house, helping with tasks that did not really need his assistance. They talked more, shared more, and gradually, carefully, began to build trust. One afternoon, Lily was preparing pies when Grayson came in from the barn earlier than expected. "Tom is handling the afternoon work," he explained. "I thought perhaps you might like to go for a ride. I could show you more of the property." Lily looked down at her flour-dusted dress. "I am not exactly dressed for riding, and I should finish these pies." "The pies can wait," Grayson said. "And you look perfect just as you are. What do you say?" It was a small thing, taking a break from work to go riding, but it felt significant. A choice to spend time together simply for the pleasure of each other's company. Lily wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "All right, but I should warn you, I am not an experienced rider." "Then you will ride with me," Grayson said easily. "That big chestnut mare of mine can carry us both without any trouble." And so Lily found herself seated in front of Grayson on his horse, his arms around her as he held the reins, riding out across the ranch property. The November air was cold but clear, and the Montana landscape spread out around them in breathtaking vistas of grass and sky and distant mountains. Grayson showed her the different sections of the property, explaining his plans for the ranch, where he hoped to expand, how he was working to improve the quality of his herd. But more than that, he shared his dreams and fears, his doubts about whether he was living up to his father's legacy, his determination to build something lasting and good. Lily listened and found herself opening up in return, telling him things she had never told anyone. About her childhood, always moving, never having stability. About the loneliness of being orphaned young with no one to rely on. About the daily grind of survival that had left little room for dreams or hopes. "You have those now, though," Grayson said quietly. "Dreams and hopes, don't you?" "I am starting to," Lily admitted. "It is strange, allowing myself to imagine a future that might be good. I spent so long just trying to survive each day that I forgot to think about what I actually wanted from life." "And what do you want?" Grayson asked. "If you could have anything, what would your life look like?" Lily thought about it carefully. "A home that is truly mine. Work that matters. People who care about me and whom I can care about in return. Simple things, but they feel precious because I have not had them." "You have them now," Grayson said. "If you want them. This home, this work, it is yours for as long as you want it. And as for people who care," he paused, "I care about you, Lily. More than I think you realize." They had stopped the horse on a rise overlooking the main ranch house, smoke curling from its chimney into the blue sky. From this distance, it looked peaceful and perfect, a dream of home made solid. Lily turned her head to look at Grayson and found his face very close to hers. She could see every detail, the lines around his eyes, the scar on his jaw, the hope and affection clear in his expression. Her heart hammered in her chest, but not from fear. From want, from the sudden fierce desire to close the small distance between them and see if his lips were as gentle as his words. "May I kiss you?" Grayson asked softly. "If that is too much, tell me and we will pretend I never asked." In answer, Lily closed the distance herself, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deeper as Grayson responded. It was her first real kiss, the first one born from genuine feeling rather than stolen by someone who saw her as less than human. And it was everything a first kiss should be, sweet and a little awkward and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Grayson rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I am glad you did," Lily whispered. "I am glad I did." They rode back to the house hand in hand. Something fundamental changed between them. They had crossed from possibility into reality, from might be into is. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. That evening, as they sat together after supper, Grayson took Lily's hand. "I want to court you properly," he said. "I know our situation is unusual, living in the same house, but I want to do this right. With your permission, I would like to court you with the intention of marriage, assuming our feelings continue to grow as I believe they will. Marriage." The word hung in the air between them, huge and momentous. Lily had never truly imagined marriage for herself, assuming that particular dream was for women with better prospects than hers. But looking at Grayson, she found she could imagine it. Could imagine building a life together, making this house truly their home, facing whatever challenges came as partners rather than as employer and employee. "Yes," she said, "I would like that very much." The courtship that followed was unlike anything Lily could have imagined. Grayson treated her like something precious, opening doors, pulling out chairs, bringing her wildflowers he found on his rides. They took walks together in the evenings when weather permitted, talking until the stars came out. He showed her how to ride properly, patient with her initial clumsiness until she gained confidence. She taught him some of the finer points of cooking and baking, laughing at his attempts to knead bread dough. It was not always easy. Lily's old fears and insecurities sometimes rose up without warning, making her doubt herself and Grayson's feelings. There were moments when she caught herself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this dream to reveal itself as too good to be true. But Grayson met every doubt with patience and understanding. When she pulled away, frightened by the intensity of her own feelings, he gave her space. When she worried that she was not good enough for him, he reminded her of all the ways she had improved his life and the ranch. Slowly, brick by brick, he was helping her build a foundation of trust. Winter settled in fully, bringing snow and bitter cold. The ranch work slowed somewhat, with most of the herd moved to winter pasture, and the daily tasks focused on feeding and maintaining rather than the constant activity of warmer months. This meant Grayson was around the house more, and they fell into an easy domesticity that felt like practice for the future they were building toward. One evening in late December, Grayson found Lily in the kitchen making preparations for Christmas. She had been planning for weeks, wanting to make the holiday special not just for Grayson, but for all the ranch hands who worked so hard and rarely had much in the way of celebration. "You are going to exhaust yourself," Grayson said, watching her roll out dough for what must have been the fifth pie of the day. "I want to do this," Lily insisted. "These men work hard all year. They deserve a good Christmas meal and some treats." Grayson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. They had become more physically comfortable with each other over the past weeks, though Grayson was always careful to respect boundaries. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known," he said quietly. "Do you know that?" Lily leaned back against him, letting herself enjoy the solid warmth of his presence. "I just know what it is like to have nothing, to be alone during holidays while watching others celebrate. No one should feel that way if it can be helped." "I love you," Grayson said suddenly. "I know we have not been courting long, but I am certain of it. I love you, Lily Owens." The words hung in the air and Lily froze, her hand still on the rolling pin. Her heart was racing, and she felt tears welling up for what felt like the 100th time since meeting this man who had turned her entire world upside down in the best possible way. "I love you too," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him. "I did not think I was capable of this, of feeling this much. But I love you, Grayson. I love you so much it frightens me sometimes." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Lily forgot all about pie dough and Christmas preparations. She lost herself in the kiss, in the feeling of being loved and loving in return, in the miracle of having found this man who saw her as worthy of such devotion. When they finally pulled apart, Grayson was smiling broadly. "Marry me," he said. "I know this is sudden, but we already know we work well together. We live together already, though properly separated. I love you, you love me. Why wait?" "Because I have flour all over me and you are proposing in the kitchen," Lily said, but she was laughing even as tears streamed down her face. "I do not care about flour, and the kitchen is perfect because this is where I see you every day, working magic, making this house a home." Grayson took both of her hands in his. "Lily Owens, will you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife?" There was only one possible answer. "Yes," Lily said. "Yes, I will marry you." Grayson whooped with joy, picking her up and spinning her around the kitchen until they were both laughing and dizzy. When he set her down, he kissed her again, and Lily thought her heart might burst from the happiness flooding through her. They decided to marry after Christmas, but before the new year. There was no point in waiting when they were both certain, and neither wanted a big, elaborate wedding. Tom agreed to stand up for Grayson, and they invited Sarah from the boarding house to stand up with Lily. Christmas itself was everything Lily had hoped for. The house was decorated with pine boughs and candles, filling the space with the scent of evergreen and beeswax. The ranch hands were invited to the main house for a feast that Lily had spent days preparing. Roasted beef, potatoes, vegetables, fresh bread, and more pies and cakes than one household could reasonably eat. The men were overwhelmed by the hospitality and the quality of the meal. Old Tom actually teared up over his slice of apple pie, saying it reminded him of his mother's baking from years gone by. It was deeply satisfying to Lily to see the joy her efforts had brought, to feel like she was part of something larger than herself. That evening, after the hands had returned to the bunkhouse and she and Grayson were cleaning up together, he pulled something from his pocket. "I have something for you," he said, suddenly looking nervous. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have it." He opened his hand to reveal a ring, a simple gold band with a small but genuine ruby set in it. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to her when they married. She wanted me to give it to my wife someday if I was fortunate enough to find someone to share my life with." Lily stared at the ring, overwhelmed. "Grayson, I cannot. This is a family heirloom." "And you are going to be family," Grayson said firmly. "Please, Lily, it would mean everything to me for you to wear it." With shaking hands, Lily allowed him to slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. She looked at it glittering in the lamplight and felt the weight of what it represented, not just their engagement, but acceptance into Grayson's family history, a place in his life that was permanent and real. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will treasure it always." The week between Christmas and their wedding was a flurry of final preparations. Lily made herself a new dress from fabric Grayson insisted on buying when they made a trip to Independence for supplies. It was a simple but beautiful design in deep blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. Sarah helped with the fitting and sewing, chattering excitedly about the wedding. "I always knew something good would come your way," Sarah said as she pinned a hem. "You were too kind and too good to spend your whole life scrubbing floors at Mother's boarding house. And Mr. Lattimer is a fine man from everything I have heard. You are lucky to have found each other." "I know," Lily said softly. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself to believe it is real." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the last day of 1877. They held the ceremony in the ranch house, with Tom, Sarah, and the ranch hands as witnesses. The circuit preacher who served the Independence area performed the service, and Lily spoke her vows with a clear voice and a full heart. When Grayson said "I do" and slipped a matching gold band onto her finger to sit beside his mother's ruby ring, Lily felt something inside her finally settle and heal. This was real. This was forever. She was no longer Lily Owens, alone and adrift. She was Lily Lattimer, with a home and a husband and a future stretching out before her full of possibilities. The kiss that sealed their marriage was met with whoops and applause from the ranch hands. Tom insisted on making a toast, raising his cup of cider and saying, "To the boss and his bride. May your life together be long and happy, and may this ranch continue to prosper under your care." They celebrated with another feast, this one even more elaborate than the Christmas meal had been. There was music and dancing, with one of the hands pulling out a fiddle and playing lively tunes while the others took turns dancing with the bride. Lily laughed more that day than she had in her entire life, swept up in the joy and celebration. As evening fell and the guests began to drift away, Grayson took Lily's hand. "Come with me," he said. "I have one more surprise." He led her upstairs, to the master bedroom that had been his alone but would now be theirs together. Lily had been up here only once before, briefly, while cleaning. Now she saw that Grayson had made changes. There were new curtains on the windows, a new quilt on the bed, and a fire crackling cheerfully in the fireplace. "I wanted it to be ours, not just mine," Grayson explained. "A fresh start for both of us." Lily was deeply touched by the gesture. She moved to the window, looking out over the snow-covered ranch, the buildings and corrals barely visible in the gathering darkness. This was her home now. Truly, legally, permanently her home. The thought was still strange and wonderful. She felt Grayson come up behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. Lily turned to face him, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "Not a single one. You have given me everything I never dared dream of having. Safety, security, a home, but more than that. Love. You have given me love, Grayson, and taught me that I am worthy of receiving it." "You were always worthy," Grayson said firmly. "The world just failed to see it. But I see you, Lily. I see your strength and your kindness and your beautiful heart. And I promise you, for all the days of my life, I will work to make sure you never doubt your worth again." They came together in a kiss that deepened and grew more urgent. That night, as man and wife, they became fully one, and Lily discovered yet another thing she had never dared hope for: physical love that was gentle and passionate and wholly good. In Grayson's arms, she finally understood what it meant to give yourself completely to someone else and have that gift treasured and returned. The following months brought challenges, as any new marriage must, but nothing that shook the foundation of love and trust they had built. There were disagreements about household finances and ranch decisions, moments of frustration when the hard work of ranching life wore on them both. But they learned to talk through difficulties, to compromise, to support each other through struggles. Lily flourished in her role as ranch wife. She expanded the vegetable garden, started keeping chickens for eggs, and became known throughout the region for her excellent cooking. When neighboring ranchers came to visit or conduct business with Grayson, they invariably complimented him on his good fortune in finding such a capable and charming wife. But more than her competence, what people remarked on was how happy the Lattimers clearly were. There was an ease and affection between them that was evident to anyone who saw them together. They worked side by side without needing constant communication, moved around each other with the fluid grace of people who had learned each other's rhythms perfectly. When they looked at each other, the love was unmistakable. In the spring, Lily discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but confirmation came from the doctor in Independence when she and Grayson made a supply run. The joy on Grayson's face when she told him was something she would treasure forever. "A baby," he kept saying, his hand on her still flat stomach in wonder. "We are going to have a baby. Are you pleased?" Lily asked, though his expression made the answer obvious. "Pleased does not begin to cover it," Grayson said. "You have already given me so much, Lily. You have taken this house and made it a home. You have taken my life and made it full of joy. And now you are giving me a family. I am the most fortunate man alive." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lily continued her household work, though Grayson fussed over her constantly, insisting she not overdo things. She secretly enjoyed his protective concern, this evidence of how much he cared. As her belly grew through the summer months, she found herself spending long hours imagining what their child would be like, planning the nursery, sewing tiny clothes with Sarah's help. In the early autumn of 1878, after a labor that was long but without complications, Lily gave birth to a son. They named him James after Grayson's father, and holding the tiny warm weight of him in her arms, Lily experienced a love so fierce it brought tears to her eyes. "He is perfect," Grayson whispered, sitting beside the bed and staring at his son with wonder. "You are perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Lily corrected. "Against all odds, we found each other." Baby James thrived, a healthy, happy child who had his father's gray-green eyes and his mother's dark hair. The ranch continued to prosper as well, with Grayson's careful management and smart business decisions paying off in steady growth. By the time James was a year old, the Lattimer Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the territory. But success and prosperity, while gratifying, were not what made Lily truly happy. What filled her heart was the life they had built together. The sight of Grayson patiently teaching young James to clap his hands, the sound of her son's laughter echoing through the house, the quiet evenings when the three of them would sit together by the fire while Grayson read aloud and Lily mended clothes with James sleeping peacefully in his cradle. These were the moments that mattered, the ones that proved she had been wrong all those years when she believed comfort was not meant for people like her. Grayson had made comfort not just possible but constant, had made it his daily promise to ensure she felt safe and loved and valued. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Emma, who had Lily's blue eyes and Grayson's stubborn determination. James was initially uncertain about this squalling creature who took up so much of his parents' attention, but he quickly became a protective older brother, always wanting to help with his baby sister. The years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. There were hard times, certainly. A particularly brutal winter when they lost some cattle, a summer drought that tested everyone's endurance, the usual injuries and illnesses that were part of life in this harsh territory. But they faced everything together, and each challenge overcome seemed to strengthen rather than weaken their bond. When James was 5 and Emma 3, Lily found herself pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to twins, 2 boys they named Daniel and Samuel. The house was suddenly very full and very loud, but Lily thrived on the chaos. These children, this family, they were everything she had never dared to dream of during those long, lonely years before Grayson. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Grayson surprised Lily with a beautiful new piano, shipped all the way from Denver at considerable expense. "You mentioned once that you had always wanted to learn to play," he said, as she stood speechless before the gleaming instrument. "I know it is indulgent, but I wanted you to have it." Lily ran her fingers over the smooth keys, producing a cascade of notes. "I do not even know where to start." "Then we will find you a teacher," Grayson said simply, "and you will learn. There is no dream of yours, no matter how small you think it might be, that I do not want to help make real." That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat together on the porch in the warm summer darkness, watching fireflies dance over the fields. Lily leaned her head on Grayson's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. "You remember that first night I came here?" she asked. "How terrified I was." "I remember," Grayson said quietly. "I could see it in your eyes, the fear and suspicion. It broke my heart a little, knowing you expected the worst from me simply because you had experienced so much of the worst from others." "I believed I would never know comfort," Lily said softly. "I thought safety and security were privileges reserved for other people, people born into better circumstances. I had resigned myself to a life of just surviving, never truly living." "And now?" Grayson asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Now I wake up every morning in disbelief at how fortunate I am. You made comfort your daily promise to me, Grayson. Not just physical comfort, though Lord knows this house is warmer and safer than anywhere I lived before. But emotional comfort, the security of knowing I am loved and valued, that I have a partner who will face whatever comes alongside me." "You gave me just as much," Grayson said, pulling her closer. "This house was just a building before you. I was going through motions, working myself to exhaustion to avoid acknowledging how lonely I was. You brought life and warmth and love into every corner of my existence. You gave me a family, a real home, a reason to build toward the future instead of just maintaining the past." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the creek burbling over stones, the wind in the cottonwoods. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to years of hard work and careful stewardship. "I love you," Lily said, the words still giving her a small thrill even after 10 years of marriage. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond if such things are possible." "They are possible," Grayson said, tilting her face up to kiss her softly. "Because I will love you the same way. Forever and always, Lily. You are my heart." The years continued their steady march. James grew into a serious, responsible young man who took naturally to ranch work, and clearly would one day make an excellent rancher himself. Emma was spirited and intelligent, constantly asking questions and wanting to understand how everything worked. The twins, Daniel and Samuel, were inseparable and constantly into mischief, keeping their parents on their toes. Lily never stopped being grateful for the life she had. Every morning when she woke up beside Grayson, every meal shared with her family, every evening spent on the porch watching the sun set over the ranch, she felt the wonder of it all. The girl who had believed comfort was not meant for her had become a woman who knew comfort in every aspect of her life. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. With Tom's eventual retirement, James stepped into the foreman role at just 19, proving himself more than capable. Emma surprised everyone by developing a passion for breeding horses, and Grayson indulged her interest, helping her start a small breeding program that quickly gained a reputation for quality throughout the territory. When Montana achieved statehood in 1889, the Lattimer family celebrated along with everyone else in the region. They had been part of building this place, had helped transform raw frontier into established community. It was deeply satisfying to see their home territory formally recognized. On their 20th anniversary, surrounded by their grown and growing children, Grayson raised a glass and a toast. "To my beautiful wife," he said, his voice strong and clear. 20 years ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. Every single day since then has been a gift. You are my partner, my best friend, the love of my life, and I thank God every day that I had the sense to convince you to take a chance on me." "I am the one who should be thanking God," Lily replied, her eyes shining with happy tears. "You saw worth in me when I could not see it in myself. You gave me safety when I had never known it, love when I had never experienced it, a home and a family and a life beyond anything I ever dared to imagine. You kept your promise, Grayson. You made comfort your daily gift to me, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." Their children cheered and applauded, and Lily looked around the table at the faces of these people she loved more than life itself. James, so like his father in temperament and values. Emma, fierce and independent and brilliant. Daniel and Samuel, now young men preparing to make their own ways in the world. And sitting at the head of the table, the man who had made all of this possible, who had loved her when she could not love herself, who had built a life of comfort and security and joy for them all. The story of how they had found each other had become something of a legend in Independence and the surrounding ranches. The lonely rancher and the scared girl from the boarding house who had built one of the most successful and happy partnerships anyone had seen. Young couples would sometimes ask them for advice, and Grayson would always say the same thing. Treat each other with kindness and respect every single day. Never take each other for granted. And remember that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every morning when you wake up. Lily would add, and be patient with each other's fears and hurts. Everyone carries damage from their past. The greatest gift you can give someone is the space to heal and the security to know they are loved even in their broken places. As they grew older, their love did not diminish but deepened. matured into something even richer than those early passionate days. They had weathered storms together, both literal and figurative. They had built something lasting, something that would continue on in their children and eventually their children's children. When James married a lovely young woman named Catherine and brought her to live on the ranch, helping to run the operations alongside his father, Lily saw the cycle beginning again. She watched her son treat his wife with the same respect and consideration Grayson had always shown her, and she knew they had succeeded in creating something meaningful. They had not just built a successful ranch, they had modeled what a true partnership could be. Emma eventually married a horse breeder from Wyoming, and while Lily missed her daughter's daily presence, she was happy to see her pursuing her passions. The twins both developed interests in different aspects of ranching and business, and it became clear that the Lattimer legacy would continue to grow and evolve long after she and Grayson were gone. On quiet evenings, when the house was temporarily empty of children and grandchildren, Lily and Grayson would sit together much as they had on that long-ago first night after their wedding. They would talk about their day, their dreams, their memories. And always, Grayson would find some way to show her that she was cherished, whether through a gentle touch, a thoughtful gesture, or simple words of love. "I never get tired of this," Lily said one such evening when they were both in their 50s and had been married more than 30 years. "Being with you, talking with you, simply existing in your presence. I thought perhaps familiarity would breed contempt, as the saying goes, but instead it just breeds more love." "That is because we have never stopped courting each other," Grayson replied. "I have never stopped trying to win your heart, even though I have had it for decades now. And you have never stopped showing me every day that I made the best decision of my life when I asked you to work for me." "The best decision of both our lives," Lily corrected with a smile. As they entered their 60s, age began to slow them both down, though they remained active and engaged with the ranch and their family. James had fully taken over the day-to-day operations, allowing Grayson to step into more of an advisory role. Lily had handed over much of the household management to Catherine, though she still loved to cook and often spent hours in the kitchen preparing special meals for family gatherings. Their children had given them 10 grandchildren in total, and the ranch house was frequently full of young voices and laughter. Lily would watch Grayson with the grandchildren, seeing the patience and love he showed them just as he had shown their own children, and her heart would swell with love for this man who had given her everything. One summer evening, when they were both 68 years old and had been married for 46 years, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset as they had done countless times before. Grayson's hair was completely white now, and his movements had slowed with arthritis, but his eyes still held that same warmth and love when he looked at her. "You remember when I first saw you?" he asked suddenly. "Standing outside the boarding house, watching the sunset with this expression on your face like you were seeing something beyond the horizon that no one else could see." "I remember you riding past on that beautiful mare," Lily replied. "I thought you were just another traveler passing through. I never imagined you would change my entire life." "I knew," Grayson said quietly. "Not right away, but soon. I think I knew you were special that very first evening when I saw the sadness in your eyes. I wanted to know your story, wanted to find a way to put hope back in those beautiful eyes." "You did more than that," Lily said, taking his hand. Their fingers laced together naturally, easily, the gesture of a lifetime of practice. "You gave me a life I never could have imagined. You gave me comfort when I believed I would never know it. You gave me love when I did not think I deserved it. You gave me everything, Grayson. We gave each other everything. Grayson said firmly. "You saved me just as much as I saved you, Lily. You brought warmth and love and purpose into my life. You gave me a family and a reason to build toward the future. You made this house a home and turned my existence into a life worth living." They sat together as the stars emerged, the vast Montana sky spreading out above them in infinite glory. Behind them in the house, they could hear the sounds of family, their children and grandchildren gathered for dinner. Before them stretched the ranch they had built together, the legacy they would leave behind. "I would do it all again," Lily said softly. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy. I would choose you again in every lifetime." "As I would choose you," Grayson replied, lifting her hand to kiss it gently. "In every lifetime, across every distance, I would find you again and again. You are my home, Lily. You always have been." They sat together late into the night, two people who had defied expectations and built something beautiful from broken pieces. A girl who had believed comfort was not meant for her had found a man who made comfort his daily promise. A lonely rancher had found a partner who filled his life with joy. Together, they had created not just a successful ranch but a legacy of love that would endure for generations. As they finally rose to go inside, Grayson pulled Lily close for one more kiss under the stars. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for saying yes all those years ago. For taking a chance on me. For building this life with me." "Thank you for seeing me," Lily whispered back. "For seeing past my circumstances to the person I could become with love and security. For giving me the space to heal and grow. For loving me." Hand in hand, they walked into their home, into the warmth and love that filled every corner, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built through patience, kindness, and unwavering commitment to each other. It was a good life, a beautiful life, made all the more precious because they had found it together against all odds. The story of Lily and Grayson Lattimer became part of the history of Independence, Montana, a testament to the transformative power of love and commitment. Long after they both eventually passed, peacefully and surrounded by family, their descendants would tell the story of how a scared young woman and a kind rancher had found each other and built something lasting and true. It was a story that proved comfort was not reserved for the fortunate few, but was something that could be created through daily acts of love and devotion. It was a story of healing and hope, of two broken people who had made each other whole. And it was a story with the best possible ending. A lifetime of love freely given and gratefully received, a partnership that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger, and a legacy that would continue long after the final sunset. They had lived fully and loved completely, and in the end, that was everything that mattered.